Denver's population is plummeting, as is the greater state of Colorado's as a whole. That is, at least, the headline that we're going to take a look at today. I did a video about a year ago about people leaving Denver and leaving Colorado because there were some big changes then. Some new data have been released, so I want to comb through that and see what's going on, what's true and what's not, and how bad it is. We're also going to compare to some other states in the same timeline to see if this is a real concern or more of a nothing burger. So here's the article. I was alerted to this by the Denver Gazette and their headline. Fewer people by tens of thousands are moving to Metro Denver, study says. The first paragraph states the case. In 2015, roughly 44,000 people moved to Metro Denver. A decade later, that number has dropped to about 13,000. Huge change. The big thing you're seeing right away is the population of Denver or Colorado hasn't dropped, which at first glance, a headline like this may seem to lead you to believe. The population is still growing every year, but the amount that it's growing has changed drastically, gone down quite sharply. This always reminds me of those jobs reports when they're released, where like, the US added a bunch of new jobs, but it was fewer jobs than were projected. So that is bad somehow. I get it. We're used to something. We're expecting something. We get something different. That changes things. But is this bad? Is Colorado's population and Denver's population growing at a slower rate bad? Well, for a big segment of the people here in Metro Denver, at least the ones I hear from, this is probably a really, really good thing. You know who you are? Native bumper stickers, always yelling about how your state, yours, is overcrowded. I'm joking a little bit. There's not too many of you, but if you live in Colorado, you live in Denver, you probably know at least somebody like this. For you folks, this is great. Fewer people moving, more space for you. This should solve all of the problems. Of course, I'm being facetious. It may or may not solve anything. The problems, some of them are real, some of them are pretend. That's the case with anything. But honestly, if you've been worried about Colorado and Denver getting overcrowded for a long time, which is a legitimate concern, as much as I was being facetious back there, how would you not see this as a good thing? So the article goes on, the nearly 70% decrease in net migration in 10 years. That is a lot. That is kind of crazy. Holds ramifications for the region's economy and offers a worrying insight into its ability to compete with peers elsewhere in the country. According to the Common Sense Institute, which produced the study, we will dig into the actual study here to see what's going on. But despite my efforts at optimism, they are taking a much more worried tone here in this article. So you may wonder, what is the problem with that? What bad economic ramifications are going to happen from fewer people moving to the state? Well, they have a quote from the authors of the study that says, as migration slows, Denver may face tightening labor markets, reduced economic dynamism, greater fiscal pressure on public services, particularly as the population ages. That is one very interesting part of this, is that the population is getting older in Denver and in Colorado, and as fewer new people move in, even if the population isn't shrinking, the workforce is as people reach retirement age. They also mentioned too the statewide drop, Colorado, not as big as the 70% drop in Denver migration, but it is still down 52.5%. That is also still big. The question, of course, is what's causing it. And if you're watching this video, you may have your own theories. The Denver Gazette asked the authors of the study, and they said, well, of course, we can't attribute it to just one cause, but they say right off the top, the cost of living plays a critical role in people's decision to relocate, especially younger people. Colorado and Denver have seen prices rise at a quicker pace than the national average, and most residents feel it in their day-to-day lives. And one big element of this that I can speak to, of course, is housing affordability. I talk about it all the time on this channel. If you don't know, I'm a local real estate agent, run a real estate team here in the Denver Metro. It's our goal to be your go-to resource for anything residential real estate in Denver. And yeah, we've looked at charts, we've looked at numbers, not just on home prices, but home affordability. When you look at the price combined with the interest rate and what you're having to pay in your monthly payment every month, and then adjusting that for inflation over time, this very well may be the most unaffordable time to buy a home in America and also in Denver. We've mentioned it before. There's sort of a rule of thumb that the sweet spot for how much you should be spending on your mortgage payment per month is 20 to 25% of your income. Right now, with these numbers, people are touching 40 to 45% of their income. Not everybody, but We've looked at the graphs before. It makes a big, big difference. So affordability, at least when it comes to housing, yeah, that is a problem we have here in Denver. And it does not surprise me that that's causing people to move out and fewer people to move in. I want to move over to the actual article from the Common Sense Institute. We've looked at their stuff before. What is this? What do they do? All I can tell you is what I can find, and that's they pretty much monitor economic data in Colorado. And so they go a little deeper here to lay out the case for why this is a problem. They say historically net migration, particularly among working age individuals, has been a critical driver of the state's labor force growth and overall economic vitality. A sustained decline in net migration reduces the inflow of skilled workers, limiting the ability of businesses to recruit talent and expand operations. And the dynamic places upward pressure on wages, contributes to labor shortage, and constrains economic productivity across key sectors. Okay, the last part is a little vague, but upward pressure on wages and labor shortages, both those things to me, sure, if you're a business owner, that's no good. If you are a worker, that doesn't sound that bad. It's that whole thing of there are no solutions, only trade-offs, right? But let's look at this in one of my favorite forms, graph form, which this report lays out really, really well. Here's the graph on net migration for Colorado. You see it, 2015, way over here, almost 69,000. That is a nice inflow of folks. And you see it gradually decline. We look at the reasons for this. We're going to talk more about that. It's not just affordability, right? It's a handful of things, but COVID is probably one of them. And definitely 2021, in the height of, 2020 going into 2021, lockdowns and those sorts of things. Yeah, that was a low point for net migration. That makes sense. But you see the trend was going downward well before that. And actually since 21, it's been creeping steadily up. So where we bottomed out at 10,000, we're now at 32,000 in net migration. So the headline in the report says one thing, and I'm sure that they know more than I do, but I'm seeing this and going, our net migration is actually still recovering positively every year since the bottom of COVID. Now, is it anywhere near where it was prior to that? No. Do we want it to be? No. If we get 70,000 people moving to Colorado every year, that's going to put even more stress and pressure on roads, traffic, infrastructure, crowds, all these things. But I don't know. Maybe that is good. Maybe that is better to have just big net migration numbers every year. I'm actually not sure. But when we look at the Denver numbers, you see a very similar graph, but you'll notice net migration actually dropped below zero. So we were actually on the net losing people in 21 and 22. Well, we're back up. Net migration 2025, they're projecting 13,000. That's still way down from the 43,000 in 2015. What are the reasons for this beyond affordability? Again, you may have your own opinion. They talk about some of them here in this report, but it's probably the things you hear, especially in the Denver metro, a lot. Concerns about crime, homelessness, lingering effects of COVID, because that did have a big effect. However, those things are definitely true in the Denver metro. Are they true of Colorado, the state as a whole? Because, like I said, similar pattern here. Now, it's true that the Denver metro is like the population center of the state, so that's, of course, you're going to see similarities. But there might be something else going on, and that's why I wonder if affordability is the major factor driving this, because affordability is going to be a challenge for people across the state. What I love is that the report broke it down against other metro areas. So you see here at the top, we have the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood metro statistics area. That's where the census area, that's how it's measured. That's the Denver metro. Okay, 2014, net migration, 32,000. 2024, 10.9. That's a 66% change, which is slightly different from the 70% we saw. Maybe because we're just looking at the census area here, but margin for error, same thing. If you compare that to the Austin area, they're actually up 1.7%. Nashville is up 25%. Phoenix, which is a direct competitor to the Denver area, 25%. Salt Lake City, 1,800%. Okay, so they lost 632 people in 2014, and they're up 10,700 here in 2024. Big glow up for Salt Lake. And then Seattle and the Tampa area, both those are up, 30% and 23%. So these are compared because they're similarly sized metro areas. A lot of them are on the western side of the U.S. too, not all of them. Many of them have similar politics to Denver, and there's a big difference. We're the only one on this list that's down big. There may be some that weren't included here, of course, because any report that's released is probably trying to make a point, but still, this is powerful stuff. And we can also look at projections, because it's not just about what's happening, it's about what's going to happen in the future. That's probably more important. And the report has a graph on that as well. They pulled population projections out to 2050 from the Colorado State Demography Office. We're going to look into that here in a second. But here's the projection for the Denver area area out to 2050. And it's kind of wild. So here we are in 2025, 13,000. Big jump in 27 and 28. Don't know why. They don't really explain that, why they see that big jump happening, but that's what they expect, followed by a gradual decline for the next 20 some odd years. You'll notice they say a surge in net migration over the next several years could support short-term labor force growth, consumer demand, housing market activity. However, the anticipated decline beginning in 2029 suggests this boost may be temporary. Why the boost? I don't know. And also, this is a projection. What are the odds that the projection for 2050 is what it's expected to be now? What are the odds that the reality in 2050 match the projection now? Because let's look at that Colorado State Demography Office. And we can look actually at their forecasts and look at what their projections have been in the past. And you'll see a previous report states the statewide population is projected to grow by 45,000 in 2024 and 50,000 in 2025. That was the projection. And here's the reality, 25,000 and 32,000. So greatly missing those projections. Again, when we're looking that far out, there's going to be a whole lot of things you don't see coming. So it's hard to put a ton of stock into these net migration projections. And so we saw the population numbers compared to a lot of different metro areas of similar sizes, similar makeups. But of course, the one I'm curious about is California. Okay, that's been a hot topic of conversation too. Is Colorado becoming California? Colorado's policies are moving a little more to the left, closer to California's, certainly not the same thing. But if we're going to look at Colorado's population as a state, why don't we look at California's population as a state too? So quick refresher, Colorado state migration trends, it was around 70,000. And this is on a state of 5.9 million people, by the way. In 2025, gradually slowing down to 2021 where it was just up 10,000, and now we're back up 32,000. In California, you do see a similar graph. The numbers are, of course, way higher because California is a state of 39 million people versus 5.8 million. But you see a similar trend. The big difference is in 2021, they were down as a state. This is not a metro area. This is their state. Their state numbers were down a few 100,000. And they were down for 3 straight years. Net negative migration before finally going up again in 2024. So what you see here is what I think you see in a lot of areas for comparison between Colorado and California, a more pronounced version of the same trend in California, more extremes. We have seen a big change in the way people move since COVID, but you'll see the population numbers were changing even before that too. It is worthy to ask whether this move away from metro areas to more rural areas to have more space and to get some more affordability, because those are the trends. Is that a fad or is that just the way of the future? Things do seem to swing back and forth. The pendulum goes back and forth. So that would be my guess as for what will happen. It's very hard to project anything out 20, 25 years. But of course, I have no idea. It is interesting that population growth is so much lower than it was 10 years ago, but also it has grown ever so slightly since 2021. I would be curious to hear your thoughts. If you have them, please comment. If I can do anything for you, please reach out. Got ways to do it in the bio and in the description of this video. Otherwise, love you. We'll talk soon.